Hey gang, welcome back to another video. I hope you're doing well this week. So today's video is all about booking races into your marathon training block. Now James and I sat down recently to do a podcast episode on this, so I'll leave the link down below. I'm pretty much going to share the same information, so if you've already listened to the podcast then you probably know what's coming, but I just thought it was such a useful bit of information, then I should definitely put it out there on YouTube as well if people aren't familiar with the podcast. So if you haven't heard of it, it's called the Running Hub podcast, released every Friday. You can find it on sort of Apple Podcast or Spotify, and we share the links over on Instagram as well. So that's the topic of today, and this is if you've got a big marathon target race booked and how you can build races into your training plan. So let's start off. We'll start off backwards. You've probably got your big target race, this 26.2 miles, and you're probably giving yourself anywhere between 16 weeks, 12 weeks if you're a bit advanced to the marathon game, maybe a little bit longer if this might be your first marathon. Last week's video was all about sort of the structure of marathon training, so you can go and check that one out as well after this episode. I'll leave a little link up here. So we're starting off with our big target race. This is going to be our A race. This is where all of the focus is going to be on. Some people want to build multiple races into their training plan, but if you're going for a big marathon, normally we say this is your A race, and this is where you sort of really put all of your energy and focus onto. You can build other races into that, but obviously they become smaller byproducts of the main event, shall we say. Why we call it the A race is because it is your big target goal, and also we don't want to throw too many other races in there to sort of, what you do is basically over race and you become too tired before your actual 26.2, and you don't want that, especially if it's your main focus. So we're going to work backwards. I know it seems a bit not the right way to do it, but big target race is blocked in the diary. Now this is kind of the format and structure that James and I have used on the past for ourselves and for our clients, and this is kind of how things work. So either a week or 2 weeks beforehand, we build in a 5k or a park run into our training plan. It's not always necessarily easy to find 5ks that are local, that are flat. So sometimes we choose a nice flat park run to go and do the week or 2 weeks before. And the reason behind this is that from a 5k you can recover quite quickly from, but also it's a really nice confidence boost if you run a super quick time. You feel really good going into your marathon, and you feel like, yeah, I'm fit at the moment. Wouldn't recommend it for everyone if you feel like, you're going to push too hard and you're not going to recover, but we think a week or 2 weeks, there's enough time to recover from that. Park run, it's free as well, so it's always a good way to just test out, go along with some friends. And also, if you wanted to pick a flat course, you could go in, do a bit of tourism and choose another location. We before have taken that opportunity to try out new places, especially scout out the flatter courses. So the next big race after that is normally 3 or 4 weeks out, and this is when you want to look for probably a 20-mile race. You want to be doing your longest run that sort of time out from your marathon anyway, so if you can build a race into it, why not? Doesn't necessarily mean you have to do a race at this stage, but we just find that with 20 miles it can be quite daunting, especially if it's like your first one. If you have a race booked in, it just means that you can cover the distance, you've got the support around you, and you've got that race day atmosphere to really keep you going. Also, it's a really good opportunity to practice your kit, to practice sort of like dinner the night before, your race day breakfast, your fueling strategy, and basically iron out any kinks so that if you make any mistakes here, you can rectify them for the day. But also if things really go to plan, then boom, take it through to your marathon, and you hopefully can then see a really good race with your marathon with all of those strategies involved as well. Some people might do a couple of 20s, but if you're only building up to around 16 to 18, 20 mile marker, this will be a perfect opportunity. You get a medal at the end of it, and also if you are a little bit more experienced and you want to build some miles beforehand or afterwards, you can build that run to say 21 or 23 miles. We wouldn't normally recommend, if you are just going for a target marathon, to do multiple marathons along the way. So yeah, you don't need to cover the full distance before your actual race day. Again, 3 to 4 weeks out so that you can recover properly from it. You go into the taper and you can feel fresh on your marathon day. The 20 milers are also a really good opportunity to test out some of your sort of marathon race pace. We don't normally recommend going to do the whole thing at marathon race pace because, again, you might fatigue yourself too much, and then by the time the race comes around, you feel too tired and you've basically peaked at your 20 miler rather than the marathon. Before that, we're moving back earlier into the training block. We recommend sort of maybe around halfway of your training block booking in a half marathon, just because that gives you that little bit of focus. It's that small stepping stone on towards the marathon. So in the first part of your training, it's not just, oh, I've got a marathon and it feels so far away. You've got that short-term goal to focus on that speed over the half marathon, which will then help you to make marathon pace feel a little bit easier. Again, it's another great opportunity to grab that confidence boost along your training plan, and also it can help you work out if the training structure is working for you or not, or if you maybe need to tweak or change things going into the next part of your marathon training block. And then we come into sort of the real sort of starting of the plan, an opportunity to build into maybe 10Ks, 5Ks, just some other distances, just so that you can get some races under your belt. It's not necessary to do this, but you know, we might find that, especially with us in the way the world is at the moment, we've got loads of races that have rolled over, especially for those at the moment that are training for an autumn race. There's going to be a lot of shorter distance stuff in the summer. You don't find too many long distance stuff in the summer just because of the heat and it's, you know, summer holidays. So some 10Ks would be a great opportunity to build those in. Locally in Milton Keynes, we have some sort of what they call the East Midland Grand Prix series. I'm just trying to think of how you can relate that to something else, but essentially they are midweek races, so normally like Wednesdays and Thursday nights, anywhere between sort of like 4 to 6 miles, and it's a great opportunity to get out there, see what a race is like. You can do some tempo work in there as well, threshold work, so not necessarily racing it, but it just means that you can get some speed work done in it's an easier environment when you're running with people rather than doing it solo or in a smaller group. So it's not a necessary part, but again, you know, if you can PB over multiple distances within your marathon training block, you're going to feel great as the training continues. Obviously, you can build races into your plan whenever you like. I personally as well, in the past, have built in multiple half marathons if I've found stuff that's local, or, you know, going along with friends, just because of longer training runs. It's easier to do them in a group. So like, say if all my friends are going to do a race and I'm like, well, who am I going to train with at the weekend? I'll book that race too. And it just means, say if I've got 16 miles on the plan, I can go and do the half marathon, do a warm up or a cool down, and I've got my long run done. And got a medal at the end of it as well. Also had a fun day out. The only thing to be mindful of is that you don't want to sort of go too fast and keep it at whatever pace is on your plan. Because if you, like I said at the start, if you start to over race, you begin to overtrain, you become fatigued, and that can just lead to a lot more problems. So yeah, with the races, just be mindful. If you're going to just do them as training runs, you have to try and stick with that and be disciplined on the day, because we all know what it's like. It's so easy to get caught up in the race day atmosphere and go off too quick when the gun goes. But yeah, take it steady if needs be, but utilise the races as you can. Also, the benefits of doing races, that it helps you to overcome any fears or anxieties that you might have towards a race day, because it's a big deal, isn't it, turning up to a race event, making sure you get yourself to the race village or the race start and time. And just by practicing what happens on a race day, you're going to feel better when the main event comes around itself, because you have the pressure of running the distance. You don't want to add the extra pressures of how to get there, your logistics, you know, if you've forgotten any kit. So if you keep practicing it, we all know what practice makes perfect. So I'd recommend definitely adding races into your marathon training block rather than just having your marathon. And especially if you're new to sort of like your running journey, you might not know many races about, you know, if you're quite new to the community, you don't know what races are going on and what's local to you. Because I remember a story, I was chatting to my uncle, and at work he was chatting to a young lad who had signed up for the London Marathon. He'd got a charity place and he'd been doing all his training on his own. And my uncle was like, but you're doing London, it's one of the busiest races in the whole of the UK. And if you're not used to training around, like running around people in crowds, it's going to be a whole new thing to you. So definitely doing races can get you accustomed to that, because London and some of the other big marathons are busy. I mean, don't get me wrong, it helps you. The atmosphere is electrifying and it will help you get you round. But if you run everything on your own, you're going to have a big shock to the system when it comes to race day. So that can just have a huge benefit alone, is just learning how to run in groups. If there's people that stop in front of you, because it does happen, people will stop dead in front of you and you're like, whoa. But if you've done that and you've practiced it, you're going to know what's coming ahead of you. And the last thing, if you've got loads of races booked in, or maybe loads of them have rolled over from last year, don't feel like you have to do them all. You really don't. I know that you maybe have like spent a lot of money on the races, but just think about how they fit into your training block, and if you're really going to get benefits from doing lots of events. I know it is fun, it really is fun, but you don't want to build too much into that it's at detriment to the rest of your training, because with racing, normally what we recommend is having a taper. So the week of the race, you take it a little bit easier, and the week after the race, you kind of gradually build back into your training again. And if you're constantly racing, you're going to be tapering, recovering, tapering, recovering, tapering, recovering. And you can't really then actually get any proper training benefits in there. You just can't get into the nitty gritty of your training, which you really, really need to help you get your performance target. And we all know that one of the biggest things that we say is that consistency is going to get you the results. And if you're constantly tapering and recovering, then you're not going to get that consistency there. You'll get the consistency of the racing, you'll have that nailed, but the rest of the actual training block is kind of a bit bitty and a bit everywhere. So yeah, don't feel like you have to do stuff, especially because it's been rolled over from the year before. See if you can defer it, see if you can transfer it to someone else, or, you know, the money's gone now. Like, that's what James always says to me. You know, once you've paid for the money, it's gone, it's not in your account. So, you know, just be at peace with it and know that it's supporting race organisers, because they've had a tough year too. So I hope that video helps you out. Now, I don't want you to go and like get your credit card out and start booking loads of races just off the back of that. But hopefully this just gives you a bit of insight into how we build races into our training plan, and how it also can benefit your actual race. So the main things is it's to help you along your training journey, gives you that little bit of confidence, helps you to practice stuff for race day, but also be mindful not to over race. You know, big thing. The top elite marathon runners will only run 1, if not 2 marathons a year. Now that says something, because the amount of training that goes into it and how much energy is taken out. And I've heard of it like a bank. Essentially, when you're training, you're filling up the bank. You're depositing money into the bank. You keep filling it up every time you train, you know, putting these little pounds in. You're topping up your bank account. But then when you race, you exchange that money, and then you need to keep training, recovering, topping up that bank account again. So if you keep racing and you keep withdrawing, there's not going to be anything left, and you'll be going into your overdraft. So just keep that in mind. Nice little analogy there for you. Yeah, it's not meant to scare you, it's not meant to sort of like put anyone off racing, but just a bit of advice in terms of getting that balance right. Thank you for tuning in to today's video. Hope that you found this useful and you take this along your marathon journey with you. If you're interested in joining the Running Hub platform, we run 4 classes a week to help you with your strength, core and stretching, to help you to become a stronger, fitter and faster runner. We also have a really nice supportive community, and there's lots of people that are doing London and Manchester Marathon in here as well. So if you just want that little bit of extra support and accountability on your way to the September and October marathons, then come and join us. I'll leave the link down below. Also the same with the Running Hub podcast if you want to check it out as well. But thanks again, and I'll see you all next week for another video.